Assalamu alaikum class, good day. So today we are gonna do chapter 1 from the book Environmental Sciences by G. Tyler Miller. This chapter is entitled Environmental Problems, Their Causes and Sustainability. So I would like to start with the case in the beginning of this chapter. It's not in the slide, so I'll just read it for you. Living in an exponential age. Two kings enjoyed playing chess, with the winner claiming a prize from the loser. After one match, the winning king asked the losing king to pay him by placing 1 grain of wheat on the first square of the chessboard, 2 on the second, 4 on the third, and so on. The number of grains was to be doubled each time until all 64 squares were filled. The losing king, thinking he was getting off easy, agreed with delight. It was the biggest mistake he ever made. He bankrupted his kingdom and still could not produce the incredibly large number of grains of wheat he had promised. In fact, it is probably more than all the wheat that has ever been harvested. This fictional story illustrates the concept of exponential growth, in which a quantity increases by a fixed percentage of the whole in a given time. Anything growing by a fixed percentage undergoes exponential growth. As the losing king learned, exponential growth is deceptive. It starts off slowly, but after only a few doublings, it grows to enormous numbers, because each doubling is more than the total of all earlier growth. Here is another example. Fold a piece of paper in half to double its thickness. If you could continue doubling the thickness of the paper 42 times, the stack would reach from the earth to the moon. That is 3,86,400 kilometers, or 240,000 miles. If you could double it 50 times, the folded paper would almost reach the sun, 149 million kilometers, or 93 million miles away. Since important environmental issues are population growth, increasing and wasteful resource use, global climate change, premature extinction of plants and animals, and destruction and degradation of wildlife habitats, biodiversity crisis, population and poverty, all these issues are interconnected with a growing growing exponentially. For example, between 1950 and 2003, world population increased from 2.5 billion to 6.3 billion. Unless death rates rise sharply, it may reach 8 billion by 2028, 9 billion by 2050, and 10 to 14 billion by 2100. Global economic output, some of its environmentally damaging uh, global economic output, some of its environmentally damaging, is a rough measure of resource use. It has increased sevenfold since 1950. Okay, there's a diagram that I need to show you. So it is in the slide, so we'll discuss that diagram later on when we reach at that diagram. So let's continue. Alone in space, alone in its life supporting systems, powered by inconceivable energies, mediating them to us through the most delicate adjustments, wayward, unlikely, unpredictable, but nourishing, enlivening, and enriching in the largest degree. Is this not a precious home for all of us? Is it not worth our love? Barbara Ward and Rene Dubos. Okay, class, let's now start with the differentiating between an ecology and environmental sciences. Ecology is a biological science that studies the relationship between living organisms and their environment, whereas environmental sciences uh, is an interdisciplinary study of how the earth works, how we are affecting the earth's life support systems, that is the environment, and how to deal with the environmental problems we face. uh, so in order to just define this, let me just define environment to you. So what is environment? What do you think is environment? Just think for it for a minute, and then uh, you can answer me in your mind. Okay, so what is environment to you? Environment is everything around you. That is your environment. Each and everything around you is your environment. The air in the room is the environment. The chair next to you is the environment. Okay, the laptop is the environment. The stuff that you have in front of you is your environment. If there is a high temperature in your room, that is your environment. If it is very cold, it is your environment. Anything that affects a living being is its environment. Okay, while discussing this, let's also discuss different terminologies that we use. So what is an ecologist? An ecologist is who are biological scientists studying relationships between living organisms and their environment. And then they are the environmental scientists. I've already defined them, so I'll define it again once. The environmental scientists are who use scientific information and concepts to understand how the earth works, learn how humans interact with the environment, and how they develop solutions to environmental problems. Then there are conservational biologists. So this was a recent field developed in the 1970s as a multidisciplinary science to investigate human impact on the diversity of life found on Earth. That is, in other words, biodiversity, and develop practical plans for preserving biodiversity. Then there are environmentalists who are concerned about the impact of people on environmental quality and believe some human actions are degrading parts of the Earth's life support systems for humans and many other forms of life. Then there are the preservationists. They are concerned primarily with setting aside or protecting undisturbed natural areas from harmful human activities. Then there are the conservationists, concerned with using natural areas and wildlife in ways that sustain them for current and future generations of humans and other forms of life. Then there are the restorationists, devoted to restoration of natural areas that have been degraded by human activity. It is understood that a transition in human activity, attitudes, and activities towards the environment and shift in behaviors can lead to a much better future for the planet in 2060. Let's discuss sustainability. Sustainability is the capacity of the Earth's natural systems and human cultural systems to survive, flourish, and adopt into the very long term future. What are the three principles of sustainability? Let's discuss these three principles. They have been described in these diagrams as well. So I'll just describe what is in these diagrams and then we'll continue. Nature has sustained itself for billions of years by using these three concepts: solar energy, biodiversity, and nutrient cycling. Our lives and economies depend on energy from the sun and on natural resources and natural services, natural capital provided by the earth. This is what has sustained the world for billions of years. So, the first thing, that is the solar energy. You know, everything on the earth is powered by solar energy. Without solar energy, nothing can survive. That is why we say that earth is in the Goldilocks zone, where the solar energy is right for life to exist. It is the solar energy that provides us the warmth that we need, and it is the solar energy that provides us the light that we need for photosynthesis in plants, so that the plants can grow, and as a result the complex beings, the complex organisms can grow. It was solar energy that powered the oceans to create the first single celled organisms, and then later develop them into more complex organisms. And then the plants that use solar energy, and then you see even us, every human being, and the animals, they're all dependent on the solar energy to provide food and new nourishment to them. Similarly, biodiversity, we think of biodiversity as something that we can live without, you see. But in reality, biodiversity is very, very important. Now, let me explain to you the concept of biodiversity so that you can understand it. Okay, biodiversity means, इसका मतलब ये है that you have different species, different animals, different species. There are all these different species in a single animal. They have these different species, different ranges. Okay, so there are all these different types of snakes, lizards, rats, frogs, birds. Okay, now why do we need biodiversity? Let me say, I'll give you an example from real life. For instance, when we use biodiversity, when we say the word biodiversity, we mean all these different species, like even the dangerous ones. You see, you can think of the snakes. Okay, that why do we need snakes? They're harmful, they are dangerous, they can kill us. But to be very honest, you need snakes. You cannot just kill all of the snakes. It is the venom of the snakes that is used to make the anti-venom. You cannot make the anti-venom without the venom of the snakes. So you need those snakes to make the anti-venom. Similarly, most of the powerful painkillers that we use today in surgeries, and where they're used for several medical reasons, okay, for gunshots, to treat gunshots and other things, they're actually derived from snake venom. So even venom, even venomous animals are important. Similarly, what happens if we just kill off all the honeybees? Well, we would die off in like a week, because they are the ones who pollinate the crops of the world. If the honeybees are dead, the humans are dead within a week or two. Why? Because they pollinate all your crops. Without pollination, we'll all be dead. There will be nothing to eat. And they provide this service to us free of cost. That is what we call the natural capital. The nature provides us services that are free of cost. It does not charge us anything at all. And you see, similarly, the scorpions. Okay, the black scorpion, very popular in Cholistan. It's quite rare these days. You know why? It's a very, very expensive scorpion. Its venom is used to treat HIV. So all these different species, so whatever we have, we can think of that our medicine has reached a pinnacle, and we are now making medicines for everything. We have a very good medical system, but in reality, every single medicine that we use today is based on something that we get from nature. So we need to protect the biodiversity so that we can protect ourselves. You see, malaria, its treatment is in natural products, in natural herbs. So we cannot just finish off species, kill plant and animal species, and then expect that we will be treating our own diseases. So we don't know how many more diseases can be treated by just these natural different animals or plants. We just have to do more research on this concept. And then a very important thing that the nature does for us, nutrient cycling. What is nutrient cycling? Let me explain it to you in this form. So if any one of you has ever visited a jungle or a place like a savanna, do you see dead animals over there? Animals die. You see, we just bury our dead. Okay, animals die in the wild. Some are eaten. Okay, a lion might eat a half a deer, then the rest of the half is there. So the other animals eat them, and then the carcass is there, but you don't see any carcasses lying around on the ground every time. Skeletons, carcasses, even bodies rotting away. In the human society, if something dies, it would most probably be quite rotten in a few weeks, and would be there unless some of us just try and decide to dispose of it. But in the natural world, don't you think animals die, birds die, animals die, plants die, trees die? Where do they go? This is the service that I was talking about, nutrient recycling, the cycling of nutrients. Nature takes over. Any animal that is killed, its carcass is eaten away by several predators, then whatever is left is eaten away by the ants and other creatures. Even the bones are just interred. Everything is destroyed and mixed into the soil. You don't see any carcasses, any trees lying over there. The tree will rot by itself. After a few years, it will all be gone. So otherwise, you might have found a jungle where there would be a trillions of trees lying down because all of them are old dead trees. If there was no nutrient recycling, nature provides this service to us free of cost. If we have to do this, it would be very, very expensive. Nature provides all these services. So let me explain it to you in this sense. An animal dies. Okay, the animal is now decomposed into the soil, most of its materials, everything else. Now that soil produces plants. Those plants are eaten by other animals. Those animals are eaten by the carnivores. Okay, and then they die off, and all this goes back into the soil again. You see the cycle, how this moves in a cycle. And to give you a very honest fact, do you think we get fresh deliveries of oxygen and other gases on Earth, or the materials on Earth, from somewhere in space? Earth is a ball. Okay, we have our atmosphere, that's it, yeah, true. But then there is nothing else. It's in the space where there is nothing. Nothing is delivered on Earth. So how do all of us breathe so much oxygen every day? Where does it come from? This is nutrient cycling. The same molecule of oxygen that I or you are breathing right now might have been breathed by a dinosaur millions of years ago. It might be the same molecule of oxygen. Earth just transforms its shape and then cycles it. That is called nutrient cycling. Okay, so there's so many services that the earth provides to us. Water filtration. Can you drink seawater? Earth provides this facility. You can see desalination plants are super expensive, but earth provides us this service free of cost. The water from the oceans is evaporated, it goes up, it condenses into clouds, and it falls back as rain on land. And then in faraway areas, especially where it would be very difficult to desalinate seawater and bring it to those areas, the earth transports that water to those areas. Then there are rivers, underground aquifers that we use and exploit for our water usage. And how does that water get purified? You see, it is purified first through evaporation, the technique that is still used as a modern technique, okay, to purify water. And then it is again purified. If there is any dirt or anything added to it, it is again filtered through the sand. You see, if you have to ever filter water, you can easily just filter it through these different types of rocks, and then debris, and then mud, and then you can just over the sand and everything, then the water is just filtered through it, and at the bottom what you'll get is fresh drinkable water. This is what the earth does for us every single day when we take our water from the aquifers. So all of this is the services provided by the earth, but free of cost. The earth does not charge us anything for them. Okay, so let's discuss the environment. Everything around us, the environment is everything that isn't me. So that is the environment. I already discussed this. And environmental sciences, we also discussed interdisciplinary science, connecting information and ideas from natural sciences, ecology, biology, geology, chemistry, then social sciences, geography, politics, economics, and humanities, ethics, and philosophy. Okay, environmental science is a study of connections in nature. Okay, how nature works, how the environment affects us, how we affect the environment, how to deal with environmental problems, and how to live more sustainably. The nature's survival strategies follow three principles of sustainability. Reliance on solar energy. I already discussed all these in detail, so I won't go in much detail now. The sun provides warmth and fuel and photosynthesis. Then biodiversity, astounding variety and adaptability of natural systems and species. And then chemical cycling, circulation of chemicals from the environment to organisms and then back to the environment, also called nutrient cycling. You see, even if nature has a predator, a lion or any other predator, they have their role. We can say, okay, what are you going to do with the lion? It does not produce poison even if for use. But let me give you an example, another example for biodiversity. I just came across it a few years back. So you see, there used to be no camels in Australia, but since it's most of its middle is like a desert, almost you might not get water for like a very long distance. So people brought camels to Australia quite a few years ago, like a lot of years ago, and then came the trucks, and the camels were rendered useless. So what did they do? They just left them. They just opened them and just let them go, just go roam. And today, because camels are well suited in Australia's environment, they are a big threat to their crops. Their population grew exponentially because there was nothing to stop their population growth. There are no predators, natural predators for camels in Australia. Now they are like super annoyed with all those camels. They're willing to just tell you that go grab some camels for free and just take them away from us. We don't need them because they just destroy crops. So anything in nature isn't useless. Everything has a purpose. It serves a purpose, and biodiversity serves its purpose. We need all those species. The three principles of sustainability are shown over here. You see the solar energy, the energy that powers our even our weather. You see all those videos that I have shared with you. You would have seen that even our weather is powered by our the solar energy. The rotation of the earth is affected by solar energy. The waves, the patterns, everything is a result of solar energy. Then there is chemical cycling, that all these different things are turned into different things and they just nourish all this world. And then the biodiversity that is needed for us to stay alive. Moving on to the components, the key components of sustainability. The most important component is natural capital, that is supported by the solar capital. Natural resource, this includes two separate things: natural resources and natural services. So nature provides us all these things, resources and services. So in natural resources, the useful materials, energy in nature, all those things that we get from nature, the resources, the food, energy, oil, minerals, materials, everything that is natural resources. But nature also provides us natural services. Important nature processes such as renewal of air, water, and soil. So I told you that how the oxygen atom just renews itself. Okay, the earth provides this service for us, that it renews the oxygen atom from the dirt and the mixture of sunlight and through photosynthesis, and it returns back the oxygen molecule to us. You see, there are only the plants that are capable of producing oxygen. It's basically cyanobacteria. I should explain this concept to you. Cyanobacteria is the only mechanism known to produce oxygen. It's a single celled organism, I think, and it just is the only organism that can produce oxygen. This was the only bacterial organism that produced oxygen when in the beginning, and later it is believed that one of the plants in the early history somehow encased a cyanobacteria inside it, and just the cyanobacteria became a part of the DNA of the plant, and as a result we now have these plants that produce oxygen, and this is the only source of oxygen that we have. They do not produce oxygen, they just convert the oxygen that was now converted into other stuff to oxygen, back into oxygen. You see, that is how photosynthesis works. And even if you look at photosynthesis, that would be a very different topic. We'll discuss it sometime else. How it works and the quantum rules. It is quite, you can say, a task, and the world is providing us all these services free of cost. If we had to do it, we would have to spend trillions of dollars, to be very honest. You see, the air recycling, the purity of the air, air purification, water recycling, water purification, and soil enrichment. All these services, if we had to do it, it would cost us a lot. Let me give you an example. In the Swiss Alps, okay, they try to fortify the hills and the slopes on different roads with the natural trees, because in that case the cost of putting fences along the roads on these hilly areas would be reduced by like a tenth, or you can say a fifth. You see, the cost is reduced by a lot just by using natural resources, natural systems. However, humans are prone and it's in their nature to just degrade natural capital. Scientific solutions need to be environmentally sustainable to solve all these issues that we have created for the environment today. And the natural cycling, the nutrient cycling that I was talking about, that how the inorganic material in soil becomes organic material in plants, and then it is eaten by another organic matter in animals, which is then just killed or eaten by another animal, and then it dies and it's decomposed. The dead organic matter is then again turned into the decomposition, through the decomposition process, into the inorganic matter in soil, and then again it creates grass and the animal eats it, and the cycle goes. Okay, so let's discuss the environment. Everything around us, the environment is everything that isn't me, so that is the environment. I already discussed this. And environmental sciences, we also discussed interdisciplinary science, connecting information and ideas from natural sciences, ecology, biology, geology, chemistry, then social sciences, geography, politics, economics, and humanities, ethics, and philosophy. Then there are non-renewable resources, that is which is like energy resources, metallic and mineral resources, non-metallic mineral sources. For example, uh, we are constantly looking for some rare earth minerals. These are called the rare, which are used in the cell phones. Okay, these are very rare. It is very expensive to extract them. They are in very minute quantities, but they are very good conductors of electricity, superconductors. They are the reasons why our cell phones are so small today. But these are very expensive to extract, and they just are in limited numbers in the earth. Once they are exploited and used, and we just throw them, you see how we throw the cell phones away after a few years, they are gone. These resources are non-renewable. So the policy is to use, reduce, reuse, and recycle. To reduce the use, the reuse the things that we have, and recycle it. By this, I also remember an instance. I will share a video with you about the plastic bags. So in reality, we are just make decisions based on our own thinking. For example, paper bags are good, or the fabric bags are good, and the plastic bags are very dangerous for the environment. Well, in reality, if you see the history, plastics bags were invented to stop the exploitation of nature by fabric and paper bags. The inventor actually designed plastic bags for that purpose. because it takes much more water and natural resources to produce one cotton bag as compared to a plastic bag or a paper bag. It takes a lot of trees to make all those millions of paper bags. So the plastic bag was invented because it just takes like few drops of oil or water and that's it, and just a bit of plastic. But the actual problem is that these plastic bags were actually invented so that you can just use them like the fabric bags that you just they used to in the old days. People used to carry their own bag with them to the market, to the shopping market, and put their fruits and vegetables and whatever they want to buy in their own bags and bring it back home. It was not like you go to the supermarket and they'll give you a plastic bag and you will bring it home, and what you do, you'll just unwrap it and throw the bag away. They were meant to be reused and reused. So in reality, it's not about we shift from plastic bags to fabric bags. It would be much more damaging to the environment. In fact, it is better to stay with the plastic bag, but not with the plastic, to stay with the bag that you have. You see, you do not go and buy a new bag or just get a bag for free from the supermarket. You should have a bag, you should use a bag that you already have and reuse it and reuse it and reuse it again and again until it is usable. That is the best solution to this problem. But then again, human nature and then our behavioral stuff, that we just would shift to the plastic bag and then to the cotton bag again, and without thinking of the actual impact of these things. Sorry. Again, we are discussing reuse. So, like, rather than throwing these stuff away, like glass bottles, plastic, and all those metal cans and stuff, they should be recycled. They should be reused. And the recycling policy, you all know that you have to sort your trash so that it can be recycled. No one can sort your trash if we don't do it. Okay, let me just describe a few things over here. So the developed countries with 1.2 billion people include the United States, Canada, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and the countries of Europe. Most are highly industrialized and have high average per capita GNI per purchasing power parity, above $10,750 per year, except for industrialized countries in Eastern Europe and some in the Northern and Southern Europe. These countries with 19% of the world's population have about 85% of the world's wealth and income, use about 88% of its natural resources, and generate about 75% of its wealth and waste. On the other hand, nations with 5.1 billion people are classified as developing countries, most of them in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. These countries with 81% of the world's population have about 15% of the world's wealth and income, use about 12% of its natural resources, and generate about 25% of its wealth and waste. So you see the stark differences among the extremely rich developed countries and the extremely poor, less developed countries. This is one of the reasons we have not been able to get to grips with the problem of environmental degradation. Because whenever environmental issues are discussed, the developing countries, they just blame the developed countries because they have been the ones who have reaped the benefits of economic development. They are the ones who are energy hungry, who are guzzling coal and oil and all these non-renewable resources, producing carbon dioxide, releasing it into the atmosphere for their economic development and improving the living standards of their people. Whereas in developing countries, so for example, a person in the United States, a 1-year baby in the United States has already left a trail of you can say already consumed the carbon and has already you can say released enough carbon in the atmosphere that a person in Tanzania would do in a lifetime, because it is using electricity, is using a lot of resources, wastage of plastics and diapers and all those stuff. it just accumulates over time. And in 1 year, that person has released more carbon into the atmosphere than one person who is living in Tanzania would release in his whole lifetime. He wouldn't be using transports like cars and stuff. You see, so these differences, the poor countries, they claim that we cannot pay, and all these things are being used by these developed countries. They are the ones who are causing economic, who are causing these problems. But then at the end, what happens is they come out and they say, okay, we are not responsible for this. You are in it together, we are all in it together. All this climate change and all these problems faced by the world today, we all have to solve it, okay, and we are not alone going to pay the cost of it. So these countries differ, and most of the problems stay there as they are. Okay, what is the ecological footprint? How our ecological footprint affects the earth? As our ecological footprints grow, we are depleting and degrading more of the earth's natural capital. We are living unsustainably. Environmental degradation, wasting, depleting, and degrading the earth's natural capital, happening at an accelerating rate, also called natural capital degradation. So, how we do natural capital degradation? So all these are the sources of how we are doing degradation of natural renewable resources, air pollution, climate change, then soil erosion because we are cutting down forests, shrinking forests, decreased wildlife habitats, species extinction. As a result, we have soil erosion. Again, we do air pollution through industries, and then we deplete aquifers. We pollute our waters. We overfish. We reduce the fisheries in available in the seas, and as a result, we have climate change. The nature's survival strategies follow three principles of sustainability. Reliance on solar energy. I already discussed all these in detail, so I won't go in much detail now. The sun provides warmth and fuel and photosynthesis. Then biodiversity, astounding variety and adaptability of natural systems and species. And then chemical cycling, circulation of chemicals from the environment to organisms and then back to the environment, also called nutrient cycling. You see, even if nature has a predator, lion or any other predator, they have their role. We can say, okay, what are you going to do with the lion? It does not produce poison even if for use. But let me give you another example for biodiversity. I just came across it a few years back. So you see, there used to be no camels in Australia, but since it's most of its middle is like a desert, almost you might not get water for like a very long distance. So people brought camels to Australia quite a few years ago, like a lot of years ago, and then came the trucks, and the camels were rendered useless. So what did they do? They just left them. They just opened them and just let them go, just go roam. And today, because camels are well suited in Australia's environment, they are a big threat to their crops. Their population grew exponentially because there was nothing to stop their population growth. There are no predators, natural predators for camels in Australia. Now they are like super annoyed with all those pollution. Okay, pollution cleanup, output, pollution control. क्लीन अप करेंगे तो हमारी पोल्यूशन कंट्रोल होगी, एंड पोल्यूशन प्रिवेंशन इनपुट इज पोल्यूशन कंट्रोल. So there are two ways for pollution control. That is pollution prevention. That is where we do not pollute. That is an input that we at the first stage we do not pollute the environment. And then there is another way where we just stop our output of pollution. So pollution cleanup, we just whatever has already been produced, polluted, that should be cleaned. Okay, what is the ecological footprint? How our ecological footprint affects the earth? As our ecological footprints grow, we are depleting and degrading more of the earth's. Then there are non-renewable resources, that is which is like energy resources, metallic and mineral resources, non-metallic mineral sources. For example, we are constantly we are constantly looking for some rare earth minerals. These are called the rare, which are used in the cell phones. Okay, these are very rare. It is very expensive to extract them. They are in very minute quantities, but they are very good conductors of electricity, superconductors. They are the reasons why our overexploiting shared renewable resources, tragedy of the commons. Three types of property or resource rights: private property, common property, open access renewable resources. Then there are the tragedies of the commons. Common property and open access renewable resources degraded from overuse, and then we have to find the solutions to these problems. Okay, let's discuss the ecological footprint. Ecological footprint, a model of unsustainable use of resources. Ecological footprint, the amount of biologically productive land and water needed to provide the people in a region with indefinite supply of renewable resources and to absorb and recycle wastes and pollution. Okay, agricultural footprint is the amount of biological productive land, okay, the land and water needed to provide to the people in a region with their supply of renewable resources and absorb all their waste. Okay, per capita ecological footprint is the per person the amount of land and water needed. And unsustainable would be where the footprint is larger than biological capacity for replenishment, that we use more land and water to supply ourselves to and to recycle our wastes and pollution as we should for a single person based on the land and water available on earth. So one important thing over here is that all their resources in their homes are actually displayed over here. You see, everything has been displayed, whatever they have in their homes. So you can see everything, all the balls and everything they have, and this is it. This is what they have. And you can see this modern family, what they have in their house. Everything has been displayed over here as well for you, so that you can see all the resources that they need and compare them. And you can see they use much more resources. The cars are right there. Okay, so you see more than one car, a lot of furniture, a lot of stuff. Now I was talking about this picture that we needed to discuss. Now this is the ecological footprint of humans. Okay, now an important thing, one shows that our ecological footprint is equal to one earth. Okay, over here number of earths means that these are the number of earths that would fulfill our ecological requirement, and these are on the bottom there are the years. Okay, so until before the 1990s, just before or just during the industrial revolution, humans, I believe this is from 1961, so just after the industrial revolution till the 19 somewhere before 1990s, somewhere shy of 1990s, you can see that humans were using resources and depleting the earth in a way. Their ecological footprint was just one earth or less than that, so that the earth would replenish everything. And since then we crossed the 1990s until 2010, where the data was available, our footprint has grown to around 1.25 or 1.3 earths. That means we need 0.3 more earth to provide resources to all the people living on the planet, and this can keep on growing till the future years. And you can see this projection. If we do unsustainable living standard, we follow unsustainable living standard, we would go to 2 earths by 2040 or 50. And if we use sustainable living methods, we can come back to less than 1 earth by 2040 or 50. The choice is ours. We have to choose how do we live. I can show you all some other stats. Total ecological footprint in million hectares and share of global biological capacity. Okay, in the United States has the highest. 2,810. That is 25%. European Union 2,160, 19%. China 2,050, 18%. India 7% Japan 545%. The per capita ecological footprint in hectares per person for these countries is astonishing. You can see United States being far ahead in terms of these resources. Okay, so 9.7 hectares per person is needed in the United States. In the European Union, 4.7 hectares. In China, 1.6 hectares. In India, zero point 0.8 hectares only. In Japan, 4.8 hectares. So you can see the living standards of people, they have an effect on the number of resources they need. Okay, IPAT is another environmental impact model. The it stands for I is equal to P into A into T. I is the environmental impact, and which is measured by population multiplied by affluence multiplied by the technology they use. You see, less developed countries population is high, consumption per person, that is affluence, is not that high, and which is multiplied by the technological impact per unit of consumption, which is also not much higher. So as a result, the overall environmental impact of pollution of population is quite high, okay, quite moderate. However, in the more developed countries, the population is not that high, but the living standards, the consumption per person, affluence is quite high, whereas the technology impact per unit is moderate, but it is quite high definitely. But because the population is low, the overall impact is roughly somewhere near the environmental impact of developing countries. Natural systems have tipping points, ecological tipping point, and often irreversible shift in the behavior of a natural system. Now let's discuss the tipping point for a minute. So for example, there is always a tipping point. You can for example, there is a chain, the you can say the food chain, for example, there will always be a tipping point. Okay, so at you can start taking out species from the food chain. Let's take out a species. Maybe there might be no major differences in that ecological system, in that ecological environment, but as you keep on taking out these species, you took out another one, you took out another one, you took out there would be a point where the balance would tip and things would change forever. Now there would be an irreversible shift in the behavior of a natural system. So environmental degradation has time delays between our actions now and the deleterious effects later. Long-term climate change, overfishing, species extinction, these are all the examples. Cultural changes have increased over our ecological footprint. 12,000 years ago, hunters and gatherers. Now, three major cultural events have happened: agricultural revolution, industrial medical revolution, information globalization revolution. Current need of a sustainability revolution. You see, it is said that after the last extinctions, the Palantheric extinction and all those different previous extinctions, how do we define a new era? We have always defined them based on these extinction events and global events that have happened in the previous eras. So how would we define the human eras? And it is said that anyone in the future who just goes on to dig any place, or at the archaeologists, they would easily be able to identify the pre-industrial and post-industrial worlds. So they think that the industrial revolution, the industrial medical revolution over here, is the time where we should classify another era for the earth that can be found in the earth's geological records. This was the time where things change abruptly and the earth's geological layers start to change. Technology increases population. So this is a very common concept. Time not to scale is not to scale over here, but you need to just understand that as technology has improved, our population, the world population of humans, has also improved. So human population started off 12,500 years ago at a very low level, and then it starts to gradually grow as time passes to 275 years ago, when the industrial and medical revolution started. As it starts, we make penicillin. We find that industrialization is a good thing, and you can see the graph just shooting up at a very vertical pace to a very high level to just 50 years ago, when we found out the information and globalization revolution. And since then, it's still going rapidly up. All these revolutions have contributed to increase in human population. We'll discuss this concept later on. Experts have identified four basic causes of environmental problems: population growth, wasteful and unsustainable resource use, poverty, failure to increase the harmful environmental costs of goods and services in market prices. So all these are the causes of environmental problems. Assalamu alaikum class, good day. So today we are gonna do chapter 1 from the book Environmental Sciences by G. Tyler Miller. This chapter is entitled Environmental Problems, Their Causes and Sustainability. So I would like to start with the case in the beginning of this chapter. It's not in the slide, so I'll just read it for you. Living in an exponential age, two kings enjoyed playing chess, with the winner claiming a prize from the loser. After one match, the winning king asked the losing king to pay him by placing 1 grain of wheat on the first square of the chessboard, 2 on the second, 4 on the third, and so on. The number of grains was to be doubled each time until all 64 squares were filled. The losing king, thinking he was getting off easy, agreed with delight. It was the biggest mistake he ever made. He bankrupted his kingdom and still could not produce the incredibly large number of grains of wheat he had promised. In fact, it is probably more than all the wheat that has ever been harvested. This fictional story illustrates the concept of exponential growth, in which a quantity increases by a fixed percentage of the whole in a given time. Anything growing by a fixed percentage undergoes exponential growth. As the losing king learned, exponential growth is deceptive. It starts off slowly, but after only a few doublings, it grows to enormous numbers, because each doubling is more than the total of all earlier growth. Here is another example. Fold a piece of paper in half to double its thickness. If you could continue doubling the thickness of the paper 42 times, the stack would reach from the earth to the moon. That is 3,86,400 kilometers. or 240,000 miles. If you could double it 50 times, the folded paper would almost reach the sun, 149 million kilometers or 93 million miles away. Since important environmental issues are the nature's survival strategies follow three principles of sustainability. Reliance on solar energy. I already discussed all these in detail, so I won't go in much detail now. The sun provides warmth and fuel and photosynthesis. Then biodiversity, astounding variety and adaptability of natural systems and species. And then chemical cycling, circulation of chemicals from the environment to organisms and then back to the environment, also called nutrient cycling. You see, even if nature has a predator, lion or any other predator, they have their role. We can say, okay, what are we going to do with the lion? It does not produce poison even if for use. But let me give. What are the three principles of sustainability? Let's discuss these three principles. They have been described in these diagrams as well. So I'll just describe what is in these diagrams and then we'll continue. Nature has sustained itself. So extreme poverty and the natural cycling, the nutrient cycling that I was talking about, that how the inorganic material in soil. You see the effects of malnutrition. It just, a person's heart just sinks to see such a child. But what can we do? This is the reality of poverty, and would you believe it? Us, the developed people, the developing country, even the people in the developing countries, the world spends more on perfumes than it would be needed to feed every single child and put every single child in school. But we do. And the recycling policy, you all know that you have to sort your trash so that it can be recycled. No one can sort your trash if we don't do it. Environmental unfriendly Hummer. Okay, now this is a Hummer that has used a lot of resources. It is environmentally unfriendly. It's a beast, I know that, but and everybody loves it, but it is not something that everybody needs. It degrades the environment. Use. What is an environmentally sustainable society? Living sustainably means living off the earth's natural income without depleting or degrading the natural capital that supplies it. Environmental sustainable societies protect natural capital and live off its income. Now, this is what we should do. Environmentally sustainable society meets current needs while ensuring that needs of future generations will be met. Living on natural income of natural capital without diminishing the natural capital. What are the three principles of sustainability? Let's discuss these three principles. They have been described in these diagrams as well. So I'll just describe what is in these diagrams and then we'll continue. The case study, the environmental transformation of Chattanooga, Tennessee. Now, this is an environmental success story, example of building their social capital. In 1960, most polluted city in the United States. In 1984, Vision 2000 was introduced. In 1995, most goals were met. In 1993, revision was made to the goal. We'll discuss this case in detail in the later classes. The nature's survival strategies follow three principles of sustainability. Reliance on solar energy. I already discussed all these in detail, so I won't go in much detail now. The sun provides warmth and fuel and photosynthesis. Then biodiversity, astounding variety and adaptability of natural systems and species. And then chemical cycling, circulation of chemicals from the environment to organisms and then back to the environment, also called nutrient cycling. You see, even if nature has a predator, so the wind power is another option as compared to burning coal, and then planting a lot of trees would be very beneficial for us because we have cut down a lot of trees. And the three big ideas: we could rely more on renewable energy from the sun, including indirect forms of solar energy such as wind and flowing water, to meet most of our heating and electricity needs. And it is possible. We can protect, then number two, we can protect biodiversity by preventing the degradation of the earth's species, ecosystems and natural processes, and by restoring areas we have degraded. Is it? Environmental sustainable societies protect natural capital and live off its income. Now, this is what we should do. Environmentally sustainable society meets current needs while ensuring that needs of future generations will be met. Living on natural income of natural capital without diminishing the